Automation, automation, automation. Seems like you can't go online at all these days without hearing about automation. And there are literally new tools for automating both your business and your life available almost every week right now. So how do you even go about choosing one? If you're new to the whole concept of automation, go ahead and check out this video. These are the criteria that I personally use to decide on my choice of automation platform, and how in the end Relay.app ended up as my tool of choice based on my criteria. Hi, I'm Caitlin Pierce, an educator and a scientist who has stumbled into tech because of my love of no-code tools. And you're watching Kate Automates. Be sure to go ahead and watch to the end so that you can get the 5 main features that I use to assess my automation tools. And go ahead and give this video a like or my channel a subscription if you want to see more like this. All right, question number 1 when you're looking into a new automation tool is, how much coding exactly are you willing to do? Yes, I know most automation tools bill themselves as no code or low code, but within the no code, low code realm, there is still some room for coding, and you need to know going in what you're willing to do and what you're not. Automation tools can vary as far as how accessible they are for non-software developers like me. For some of them, you're going to need to be able to read and write well in a coding language called JSON, J-S-O-N, or be able to map APIs from scratch and understand how that process works. If you're able to do those, kudos. The world is your oyster, and I'm highly jealous. But if you're like me, and you don't have either the brain space or the time to learn yet another language, you're going to want to make sure that the tool you're choosing is truly a no-code tool. Now, this doesn't mean that code's not used. What no-code means is that the code is actually hidden behind a user interface that's based on natural language, such as how we speak to one another. This leads me to reason number 1 why Relay.app ended up being my tool of choice. It is a true no-code automation tool. Every step from trigger to flow control to outputs can be done without touching a single line of code. The Relay.app developers designed each bit of their super sleek UI to be readily usable for anyone, not just software developers. Now, that's not to say you can't have some custom code. They have, for example, their custom webhooks. But for the average user, all the codey bits are hidden behind everyday language right where we want them. Going along with the idea of whether or not your automation tool of choice is a true no-code platform, you should also ask yourself, how easily can you see what you're building and share with others the ins and outs of how it works? Could, say, another teammate come into your workspace behind you and figure out what your automation is, what its inputs, processes, and outputs are, and how it's doing it? The ability for me to discreetly label all of my individual automation process steps is not something I had ever considered to be a necessity until I started using it in Relay.app. But this is really a standout feature on the platform because I can even label my workflow using headers to group different sections of the process. And I can add custom titles to every single one of my steps so that it states what it does and not just, a list of different data points that are being linked. This means that if I have someone come into my workspace with me or behind me, they can go ahead and just skim all of that plain language and see what the automation is and what it's doing without them having to dig in too deep. This makes it a great tool for teams. Another thing that I like to look at and everyone should be aware of when choosing an automation tool is, what are you willing to pay? Automation tools pretty much come in one of 2 flavors as far as how much they cost. Number 1, you can pay by the volume that you use, whether that's measured in automation actions per a specific time frame or bytes, or I'm sorry, all you developers out there cringing, whatever other, bit or bob that you can measure. Okay, option number 1 can be really appealing if what you're envisioning right now in the start is a very low volume of use, because that may ultimately look fairly cheap. But it's really important to also remember to think about, what will your cost be if you experience a sudden increase in volume in that particular activity? And what are you willing to risk if your automation should suddenly be shut off because you've hit your usage limits that you've paid for, or you are on a free plan and you have run out of, free usage. You need to think about those things to avoid service disruption and to maintain continuity of your business and whatever else you're automating. The second payment model that we see most frequently in automation is a monthly subscription, and that's what Relay.app uses. Think of having a monthly subscription in automation to paying for a bundle of service with a set number of things like users you can have in your workspace, a set number of automation calls, perhaps. A lot of different platforms are limiting the number of AI calls you can make because of the limits there. But you need to take a look at that and figure out what the minimum subscription is that will meet your use case. For Relay.app, you can see here they have a very generous free tier that has won them an awful lot of fans. And even their next tier up is only $9 a month for basically unlimited. I have yet to hit my limits using that middle tier, and I suspect that it will remain that way for quite some time. Whether you're ready to admit it or not, we live in an AI world now, so your tools are going to need to integrate accordingly. But you do need to pay attention to how the AI platforms are integrating and whether you need a separate subscription to use the AI features in your automation platform, or whether it's part of what you're paying for up front. When we look at the Relay.app subscriptions, reasonable usage of ChatGPT functions is included in all of their prices, meaning I don't need to go get a premium or pro subscription to ChatGPT to use it in Relay. And again, this is one of those things I have yet to hit the limits of, so it's been no issue for me as an average user. The other thing that you need to ask is, how is AI being used in your tool? Are you, as the user, solely responsible for crafting the prompts just like you would in an external AI platform? Or are there functions that are pre-built that you can tweak and customize for the most common things you would do? In Relay.app, you have a full list of options to guide you, and these include things like extracting and defining information from some data source like a file or a web page or an entry in Smart Suite. Number 2, to summarize data from a defined source in the format that you choose. So for example, maybe meeting minutes that come via email, or perhaps invoices that you're receiving, or maybe you're receiving feedback on something and you want to collect all of the replies and summarize them into a nice package. Number 3, translating text into another language. Again, very handy, especially if you're dealing in the world of international business. Number 4, being able to search the web for specific content or browsing specific web pages to extract information from them. This is built right in rather than needing an external scraper to do this. And if none of those common usages are quite right, well, you can still write your own custom prompt to fit your needs using previous workflow data for context right in Relay. And my new favorite feature, you can also add a little, what they're calling a mini AI agent, to help you execute your workflow by giving it a defined set of actions that it is responsible for. If you want to know more about that, because we don't have time in this video, go ahead and check the example use case that Relay's posted up in the link above. The next question: can the automation tool that you're looking at using support having a human in control at any critical or sensitive points of the workflow where you may need that failsafe? One of Relay.app's biggest claims to fame since they first released has been their human-in-the-loop features. At any point, you can set a need for data input, review, or approval, or some other human response that will pause your workflow until you receive that input from a human. That's what they mean by human in the loop. This is really valuable when you need particular judgment and situational awareness that AI and those code inputs can't really provide. For me, since I deal primarily in student records in my current role, this has been a lifesaver to ensure the accuracy of documents that will eventually become part of these students' permanent records. And the human touch doesn't just stop there. When you're using an automation tool, there's always going to be a dreaded moment where you get a notification that your workflow or run has failed. This happens for a number of reasons, including typos, missing data, or even just something wasn't where the process thought it should be. Most tools, when this happens, you end up getting a final run that is just marked as failed, and you have to figure out as the user how you can set off that trigger again or complete everything manually without somehow duplicating any work that had made it through. And this is really one of my true loves of Relay. You actually can, what I think of as rescue a failed run from the point of where it failed without duplicating any work that already got done. And you can do this either by adding manual data that's missing, or if the data exists somewhere and just isn't being pulled correctly, you can even backtrack through your integration to find it and replace it. Every automation tool is going to feature various integrations with other tools. That is the nature of what automation tools are meant to do. But it's very important for you to examine how they integrate specifically with the tools that you need and that you plan to use. For example, just because a tool says it integrates with SmartSuite or Fillout or Google Forms doesn't mean that it can complete every action you need with that tool. Part of the initial reason why I found and then started using Relay.app was because of their outrageously deep integration with SmartSuite, which is one of my everyday tools. And what do I mean when I say a deep integration? Well, that to me means not only does it already have most every action I could think of being useful with that tool already within their user interface, but also that I can pull detailed data, not just from the target record, the one that I've specified, but from any records linked to that target record, and even those that are linked to that linked record back to my target record. I haven't yet tried to go more than 3 linkages deep, but I also haven't run into any stopping points in my exploration. So near as I can tell, as long as they're connected, you can pull it into Relay. And that's with SmartSuite, but it also works similarly with Google Sheets, with a lot of their other Google integrations. And I've also heard with Notion that it does very, very well, even though that's not a tool I currently use. And to be honest, that level of deep integration is why Relay.app is the very best automation tool for SmartSuite users, especially, bar none. My humble opinion. Oh, and just as a bonus feature, their support team over at Relay.app is probably the most crazy responsive team I've ever seen in any industry. Not just when you run into a problem, but also when you have a feature request for your particular use case. When I started out, there wasn't an integration for a document generation tool, and at the time I was using a tool called Document. So I went ahead and wrote the support team a quick note, figuring that maybe in a couple months I might see an integration with Document. And within 48 hours, I had a response in my inbox thanking me for the suggestion and providing me with screenshots of their brand new integration with Document. Mind blown. Keep up the amazing work, setting the standard for support, Relay team. So a few key takeaways, 5 to be specific, that I want you to get from this video in order to deal with the flood of automation tools that are entering the market every day to find the right one for your use case. Number 1, the level of coding knowledge that's required or expected to use the platform. Make sure you check that and that you're comfortable with the answer. Number 2, check what your expected cost for your current and envisioned future use cases might be. Number 3, check what kind of AI integrations are included and that they will fit what you want out of the tool. Number 4, make sure that there are adequate control points for intervention and correction during critical or sensitive workflows. And number 5, make sure you check out what integrations are available and how deep they run with your toolbox. So, are you an automation noob or an old hand just checking out some of the newest tools in the arena? Drop me a comment down below and tell me which one you are, and let me know what else you want to know about no code and automation. Thanks so much for watching. Happy automating.